All right, guys. Hello. We have our day 2 notes here. So, day 1 was what we talked about on that past Friday that we did. So, the very first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of skip down to do these 3 problems with you. These are our very simple equations that we're going to solve. This first one actually isn't even a equation. It's really we just want to look at it and figure out what does that mean. I want to make sure we know that with these two pipes, the absolute value signs, two straight up and down bars here, it's only what's inside those that are absolute value. Here I have one that's negative here. It's on the outside. That's very different. So this is actually equal to negative, that equals negative 22. Because the absolute value of 22 is 22. And then I have this negative that kind of stick on the end. It would be very different if I had something that was like, what's the absolute value of negative 22? Well, the absolute value of negative 22 is 22. So see how these two things are different. On the outside, it sticks with us. So here I have a quick question here. What is the absolute value of negative 8? So take a minute to think about this. What value do I find the absolute value of to get negative 8? You might think 8 because then it'd switch, but it doesn't switch, remember. So if I said that x is 8 here, what is the absolute value of 8? It's 8. So 8 is not equal to negative 8, so 8 doesn't work. What about negative 8? What if instead of an x here I have negative 8? What's the absolute value of negative 8? Well, it's still positive 8. So this question right here, x is no solution. There's no number that I could put there. No solution here. There's nothing that x could be. And this is true whenever we have an absolute value equals a negative. Absolute value equals a negative, no solution right away. Over here we have one, well, what's the absolute value of x equals 0? What could x possibly be for this one? Might have to look at it and think a bit, but really the only thing that can go there is 0. So in today's work, we are either going to have no solutions, one solution, which would be 0, or two solutions. Those are our only options. No solution, one solution, or two solution. Let's take a look at an example here. Here I have x plus 1 equals 10. A lot of times we think, well, I know what to do. I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides because it's the inverse operation. You're not wrong in thinking that, but we have to remember that this absolute value is like it's in a lockbox. We can't just take things out of here. We actually need to split it up. So when we're doing these, we split this up. So this is going to be two different equations. There's equation A and equation B. So my first one is just like it's written. So x plus 1 equals 10. The other one, though, is x plus 1 equals negative 10. So there's two answers here. X plus 1 equals 10 and x plus 1 equals negative 10. Why negative 10? Well, because if I think about negative 10 going in here, the absolute value of negative 10 is 10. So notice this part, the part that came out of the lockbox, stayed the same. But then we had one with the positive just like it is and one with the negative. So here, let's solve this. Solve each equation now. So x plus 1 equals 10. I need to subtract 1 from both sides. So I get x equals 9 because I subtract 1 from both sides. On this one, we get to subtract 1 from both sides, so we get x equals negative 11, because negative 10 minus 1 is negative 11. So here I have two solutions. I have x equals 9 and x equals negative 11, because those are the only two things that work for this. And of course, we check our answer. If I plug 9 in here, 9 plus 1 is 10. If I plug in negative 11 plus 1 is negative 10. The absolute value of negative 10 is 10. They need to work. Okay, same thing here. I have my absolute value by itself. There's nothing out here like a minus 2. So I don't have to worry about anything like that. I just need to write the equation twice. That's my step 1. Write the equation twice. X minus 4 equals negative 6. And we have x minus 4 equals positive 6. If I add 4 to both sides, I get x equals negative 2. And I get x equals 10. Now let's check our answer. If I plug in negative 2 here, negative 2 minus 4 is negative 6. The absolute value of negative 6 is positive 6. Wait a second. Positive 6? I wanted to get negative 6 out. Let's check our other one. If I have 10 here, 10 minus 4 is positive 6. The absolute value of positive 6 is still positive 6. Wait a second. Oh, wait. If I have an absolute value equals a negative, just like I have here, it's no solution. There's nothing I can put in here to get out a negative 6. No solutions here. Now let's try this one. I have to write it twice. That's my step 1. 6x equals negative 12. And 6x equals positive 12. Now I need to solve both equations. Divide both sides by 6, and I get x equals negative 2. Divide both sides by 6, I get x equals 2. Now it's really important to note here, because you might think, oh, it's just a positive and a negative, right? Or a positive and a negative, I mean. But notice that that wasn't true here. So we can't just assume if we get one answer and it's negative 2 that we can just, oh, well, the other one's just going to be a positive 2. That won't always be the case. It will sometimes, but not always. Checking our answer, negative 2 times 6 is negative 12. The absolute value of negative 12 is 12. Now we plug in 2. 2 times 6 is 12. The absolute value of 12 is 12. All right. We need to make sure that we get this concept before we move on to these last two. So make sure that you can solve these by yourselves. That means you need to go back and try going through them again individually. You should do that. Moving on to these last two that we have here. Here is number 4 and number 5 of our practice ones. Now, what's different from this one to this one is that there's something outside of the absolute value. So we want to think of just the absolute value as like a lockbox. Just this highlighted part here is a lockbox. I can't touch this at all, but I can get rid of this negative 3. So before I split it up into 2, I'm going to get rid of this negative 3. Here I'm going to add 3 to both sides. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to get a bad number there, I think. This should be a plus 3. So 3x minus 6 plus 3 equals 12. I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. So that leaves me with the absolute value of 3x minus 6 equals 9. Now I have a problem that's just like these up here. The absolute value is by itself, and it's equal to a positive number. So I am going to write it twice. Three, and I'm writing it without my absolute values. 3x minus 6 equals 9. And then I'm going to write it again. 3x minus 6 equals negative 9. Notice that this side is the same on both of these. 3x minus 6, 3x minus 6, 3x minus 6. I don't change that side. I only change here. This is the only one that's different. I need to think about, well, what if that was a negative? I'm solving each of these separately, so I'm going to add 6 to both sides. Three x equals 15. And then here, if I divide both sides by 3, I get x equals 5. That's my first one. Now I'm solving the other one over here. If I add 6 to both sides, I get 3x equals negative 3, because negative 9 plus 6 is negative 3. I divide both sides by 3, and I get x equals negative 1. So here are my two solutions, 5 and negative 1. Here we go with another one. Notice this one has two things outside of our lockbox. I have to get rid of negative 3 and I have to get rid of negative 2. If I pretend that my lockbox was just x, what would I get rid of first? Well, I'd add 3 to both sides first. Then I'd divide by the negative 2. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So here I have negative 2 left, x minus 8 equals, and if I have negative 11 and I add 3, that puts me to negative 8. Then I have to divide both sides by negative 2. So I still have what's in my lockbox. X minus 8 equals negative 8 divided by negative 2 is a positive 4. Now I have a lockbox all by itself. This is exactly like this problem now. I'm going to write it twice. X minus 8 equals 4. And x minus 8 equals negative 4. Now if I add 8 to both sides, I get x equals 12. And if I add 8 to both sides over here, I get x equals positive 4. Now we check our answer because it needs to work. 12 minus 8 is 4. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Negative 8 minus 3 is negative 11. What if I plug in 4? 4 minus 8 is negative 4. Absolute value of negative 4 is 4. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Negative 8 minus 3 is negative 11. So we checked our work. That is all that I have for you today. This is a short video. This one's only 15 minutes. So your homework is right here, 15 through 21 and 24 through 49. Oh, dear. Make sure we do 49. It's like one of the easier ones. Then we need to make sure that we have that homework done, but make sure you do the 1.4 day one first. Remember, this is day 2. So there's two 1.4 assignments in there. The 1.4 day 1 is questions like this. Day 2 is questions like these 5. I know you can do it. I believe in you. I appreciate you guys watching the videos. I hope you have a great rest of your day.